Alrighty, here we are at Bike Bros again. A 2021 Rocky Mountain Altitude C50. I'm Graham. That's a piece of paper with a bunch of things we're going to talk about. Let's get into it. This is the brand new 2021 Rocky Mountain Altitude C50. This is a bike that has been totally upgraded since last year. It has more travel. It has 160mm rear travel, 170mm travel fork compared to last year's 150-160 combo. It is available in 29er, in medium, large, and extra large this year. Last year it was a 27.5 bike. Geometry has been modernized. It's gotten the longer, slacker, steeper, the entire program done. So let's go over some of the details. Like I said, Rocky Mountain Altitude C50. In Canada, this bike is $67.99. There are altitude versions available from $42.99 up to $13,500. The ones cheaper than this are going to be on aluminum frames, and obviously the expensive ones are all going to be on carbon frames. On this guy, one of the changes compared to last year's Altitude C50 is we are now looking at carbon seat stay and chain stay. Last year's Altitude C50 would have had an aluminum rear end on it, so this is one of the upgrades that helps to explain the fact that this is $1,200 more expensive than last year's C50. Also, to explain it is in the spec on this bike. So we'll see it with suspension. Last year's was RockShox suspension. You'll soon be seeing some Fox stuff and a little bit more, especially as far as brakes goes, some upgrades from the Shimano front. So drivetrain on this guy, Shimano XT 12-speed with a 1051 SLX cassette. Down in there is a DT Swiss 370 rear hub. That is 4-piston Shimano XT brakes on there. Maxxis Minion DHR2 29 by 2.4 Exo Plus casing, tubeless ready. That valve is from an inner tube. Well, there is an inner tube in there, so they send you some valves as well, so you can upgrade this to being tubeless pretty easily. The rims are taped, you've got the valves, you just got to throw some sealant in there and you're ready to go. So with the change to the rear end on this guy, we've got two things of note. That is a much beefier chainstay than the previous chainstay, even on the C70 that had a carbon rear end. So it's been beefed up. The way that pivot is basically constructed is beefed up. We now have an adjustable rear end, 10mm of adjustment for rear end length on there. We also have some of the cleanest cable routing you can possibly imagine in here. See, no cables in there. These guys used to have a little bit of the cable drooping down sort of issue. No longer. Super, super clean. One-up chain guide. Race face Affect cranks with the super nice machined out chainring. Ride 9. Rocky is pretty well known for that. 9 different positions those pair of chips can basically put the shock mount, and that stuff, depending on where you're moving it, is either changing your geometry, head tube, seat tube angle, bottom bracket height, or it's changing the way your shock works, how progressive or linear the shock is, or a little bit of both. So race face Affect seat post, WTB Volt saddle, Canadian flag, some really good rubberized down tube protections, so when you're up here, that's going to be good for shuttle rub on somebody's tailgate pad. By the time you're down here, that's going to stop you from damaging your down tube when you're spitting up rocks. We've got a Fox 36 on here. So this is an OEM version of a 36. It still has the nice rounded arches like the modern 2021 Fox 36 has, but it's got a grip damper, not a grip 2. So we just get compression adjustment with that single knob. You don't get high speed and low speed. Got an Assegai 29 by 2 point front, 29 by 2.5 front tire on Exo Plus again. Rocky Mountain handlebars and stem. SLX shifter. Ergon grips, which is a super nice touch. And another thing I think is a super nice touch is an actual Shimano dropper post lever. So, some of the things that we see geometry-wise changing from 2020 to 2021. The rear end on this bike is now adjustable. Last year's rear end, when it was 27.5, was a 425 millimeter rear end. We're now adjustable between 437 and 447 millimeters. So that's taking some of the inspiration from big enduro bikes like the Specialized Enduro, where they're getting into longer rear ends, trying to make the bike more stable. And then in this case, you can make it a bit more playful going shorter or a bit more stable going longer. I like the idea. Reach on this guy here, 480 millimeters on a size large when we're in the neutral position on the Ride 9. Seat tube angle, 76 degrees, once again in neutral position. Head tube angle, 65 degrees in neutral position. So very sort of normal numbers now. That is pretty much like 480 and 65. Those two numbers are pretty much sort of benchmark numbers, I would say, when you're looking at an all-mountain bike this year. So one of the things with this bike is it's been proven as an enduro race bike by Jesse Melamed, winning an EWS on it. But I think they're going after a little bit more of a lightweight bike in this C50 version. Hence the 36 instead of the 38 for a fork. That saves you about half a pound not having a 38 on there. Still super, super capable, and more capable than I could ever take advantage of. With the lightweight of this being 31.6 pounds, the steep seat tube angle of 76 degrees, this is going to be an amazing climbing bike. I spent a little bit of time on the Rocky Mountain Slayer, and even though it was a 37 or 38 pound bike, between the way that they engineer the suspension now on the Rockies and those angles, I found the Slayer to be an amazing climbing bike. And I view this bike a lot like just taking a Slayer and putting it on a diet. It's just a lightweight bike. They're designing this for the person who's going to ride up for most of their descents probably. Shuttling, of course, would still be fun, but this bike pretty much asks to be ridden up, down, and around. So that's the kind of rider that we're going to aim this bike at. Is an aggressive trail rider. You're riding some steeps, which is where you're wanting the extra travel and the more aggressive angles, but you still want to be able to climb and enjoy some technical climbing. This is the perfect bike for your buddy calls you up and says, hey, we're doing a BC road trip. I've only got room for one bike, and you don't know if you're hitting the bike park or hitting trails, something epic and long. This bike is going to do amazingly for that. So that is Rocky Mountain Altitude C50. Supposedly, if you smash the like button, that's going to help me out, so please do smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you like this sort of content, looking at details of bikes and talking about the details, the angles, and why it matters. Thanks, guys.